thanks again, everybody, for being here. We wanted to kind of kick off the second office hour by setting the agenda. So what we're really looking to do here today is get everybody's feedback. As you know, there have been a lot of very interesting incentive mechanisms that have been introduced into the DeFi space over the last couple of weeks, everything from, comp and balancer to spaghetti. I think pasta is the latest the latest thing sweeping Twitter. We've had yams. We've got all of our major food groups, I guess. Although it does seem to be a bit starch heavy. Maybe we need some greens in there. But lots of different incentive mechanisms. Lots of different talk and thoughts going around about things that are working, things that aren't working. And so we're really looking to kind of hone in on a few key aspects of our incentive program, which Robert will go over. He's going to be presenting most of the slides, but what we're really looking for here is for your feedback on, if there's any product that you've interacted with lately and there's something about it that you really liked or something about it that you really didn't like. Any kind of specific feedback you have from your own experience or ideas that you have is all super welcome. And then we'll also want to talk about token names and ideas around that, and just kind of take everybody's temperature. So anyone feel free to chime in at any point, but I think to give a little bit of structure, we'll probably have Robert kind of take it away in terms of the slides and kind of lead the structure of the meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Ashley, for that introduction. And thank you all for joining this call. So yeah, let me get started. I will share my screen and I will have to figure out how to do that, but that shouldn't be a problem because I'm already the host. Cool. Can you see my screen? Cool. Yeah, let me present this, not share. Cool. So yeah, this is our second virtual office hour, and I'm happy to kick this off by presenting this really brief agenda. So Ashley already mentioned the two topics. Naming is hard, as you figured out. So maybe you can give us some input on that. And the other question, the more interesting one probably, is how we should structure the GT, like the growth token incentives, who should receive them, etc. And then it will be up for discussion and Q&A. Cool. So regarding the names, I think there are three big items in our system that need to have like a good name. One of them is the Trove, which in other systems is called CDP, or like more recently, MakerDAO renamed their CDP to Vault. And then as well, like also we have the Liquity token, or LQTY, which is a bit of a tongue twister or a bit hard to pronounce, which is our current name for our stablecoin in the system. And then last but not least, we have the growth token, which is our secondary token that is intended to capture the revenue. Yeah, that's the current state. I mean, we are using those names in our publications and in our communication, but I mean, we have received some feedback on them that they are not the best, or they may not be the best choices. So here you can see some alternatives, at least to LQTY, LUSD for Liquid USD, or LUSD could be a contender. And for then this would also mean that we could maybe even use LQTY, or just LQT is the name for our stablecoin. And Trove, I don't really have a better name for it. I'm not even sure whether it's a good name or a bad name, but maybe if you can, let's just let us know what you think on those three names. If there's anybody.
Let's maybe start with the stable coin, because I think that's been the one where people have sort of had the most intense feedback so far. Does anyone
I have some.
thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I do. I have some input on this. Hi guys. I'm just gonna reread something that I've written on the Liquity on the Discord. About names in general. I thought about it. I mean, the first time I heard about LQTY, I tried to read that. It was, as you said, a tongue twister. So I'm just going to read something for you to think about. So in my opinion, a good name should have a few traits. it should be easily pronounceable and phonetically pleasing. For example, DAI, dollar, coin, whatever. It should be also memorable. It should be somewhat familiar. Think like dollar, coin, token. So for example, dollar is the name of more than 20 national currencies, including Australia, Canada, Singapore, whatever. So this is because of familiarity. It should also have a positive vibe, or to be non-controversial. The less political, the less offensive, taboo, the wider the potential acceptance. And it should also be relevant to what we're doing. So we could be brave and try to come up with names like unique names, I don't know, pigeon, dove, something like that, but that wouldn't be very, very relevant, or it could be, but it's more risky. And instead of reinventing the wheel, I'd go for the easiest LUSD or Liquity dollar. It would be memorable by default. It's very familiar. It's already a lot of established stable coins in its format. Plus, it's available, non-controversial, non-offensive, relevant. Furthermore, it's also it allows complementarity with the future potential adoption of Liquity Euro, Liquity Gold. So
that's one thing that I like about it, is that if we were to create like a Liquity of other fiat pegs, then it's very easy to kind of transfer that name over.
Okay, so that's about it. I'm very open for other names, but this would be the simplest. Thank you.
And what do you think about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was looking at that, and I was just like playing around with the way that things sound, and LUSD is kind of flat. Not that that's prohibitive, but LQT USD, that has a real nice roll to it.
What about USDL, like USDC?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the L kind of seemed a little flat to me. But LQT USD, it's got kind of a rhyme to it, and it's also kind of quick. It might be 6 letters, but it rolls off the tongue.
LQT USD, like a rhyme.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, at some point we were also thinking of like a name like Quid, which has like a connotation to it, which may not sound so negative in the US, but I heard some like more negative connotations maybe in Britain, or just like very colloquial sound. So I'm not sure what you would like, how you would think of it.
Yeah, we were thinking Quid, like QUID.
I'd associate that with English pound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I personally didn't like it when I worked in London. It also Quid. It's also a buck, and it's also in the trading floor, like you make a million, you make a buck, you make a quid. So it's very like street jargon.
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't.
Don't like that one. Okay, that's good feedback.
Yeah.
I may have 2 more. What do you think about either LCT, like LCT, could stand for Liquity Credit Token, or LCD, Liquity Credit? LCD may bring confusion because it may stand for Liquid Crystal Display, but LCT is not an acronym for anything commonly used so far, so it may be like LCT.
Yeah, that could be an option too.
Yeah, we should write that one down.
Save on later.
I think we should write a list so we have a wide vote or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we don't have that many contenders yet. I mean, we have a few of them, but maybe, I mean, feel free to brainstorm, and if you come up with new names, just feel free to put them in our Discord.
I'm really glad, sorry, Rob, I'm really glad I'm not the only one that doesn't like LQTY.
Yeah, so I mean, we realize it after fact that it may not be the best choice. And thank you so much for your thoughts on that. I mean, you outlined that already on on Discord,
Yeah,
and I think
my
this was
pleasure.
like the trigger for this discussion. So that's really helpful. Yeah, and for the growth token, I mean, growth token is maybe like a correct name, but it's not so sexy or not really like special. I was thinking at some point we could maybe name it Flux, which is a nice sounding short word, but unfortunately this is already taken by another project. Because it would like somehow, yeah.
I just keep that simple. I mean, GT sounds, I have nothing against it, nothing for it. It's neutral to me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
I think it doesn't really like, if the project is called Liquity, it's kind of nice, you know, it's kind of nice for the revenue token that people sort of like associate with the growth of the project to be similarly named. I think we're also, I mean, you know, we don't want to go like totally crazy here, but I think we'd also be open to kind of renaming the project too if we found something that we thought was just incredible. But in lieu of doing that, I would kind of lean toward keeping the or having the revenue token be similar to the name of the project. So that's why I'm kind of in favor of LQTY or LQT for the growth token, but open to other ideas.
Yeah, if you think of like
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Like,
yeah, like a BAL for balancer as well. You know, it's kind of like catchy and fits their company name.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 100% agree with that. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
If you're looking to do that and to still get the recognition that you're representing the DAO, you might want to consider LQD.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like Liquity, but then it's the D at the end. If you want to do Euro, LQE actually has pretty much the same ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My only thing is that like adding the D in there, I don't know, when I was trying to explain to, I was like describing this project to my cousin, and she was like, I was like, it's called Liquity. And she was like, liquidy as in like quite wet. Like if there's a D associated in there, then I think that might make it more like liquid than liquidity. I don't know.
I hear you.
Okay. Well, it sounds like most people agree that it sounds like agree that some, you know, LUSD or USDL, some version of that is probably the way to go for the stablecoin. And it doesn't sound like we have strong feelings about changing it to something aside from like LQTY, LQT, LQD, something like that. So I think we're maybe on the right track with that. Okay, we have another person chimed in to LQTY. Okay.
Oh.
Do you guys prefer LQTY to LQT then? Okay. That's good to note. That's good to know. Maybe we'll do like now that we kind of had these narrowed down, maybe we'll do like a voting situation in Discord or something. Okay. Thanks for the input, guys. If anyone has anything else, or if you like, I don't know, are having a good shower thing, can you come up with a name you think is better for anything? Just ping it to us. Like, we'd love to hear any and all input. Okay, so should we move on to incentives?
Yeah, maybe if there are no strong opinions on Trove, we can proceed.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Trove. Does anyone have any thoughts on Trove?
I mean, I kind of not really connected to anything, you know, any liquid type stuff. So Trove, yeah. What do you put in a Trove? Treasure or gold, I guess, but not a liquid. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I guess like Trove is kind of similar to Vault. One thing I don't like about Vault and MakerDAOs is that it like Vault has this implication that whatever's in there is sort of safe and locked down, which when you're dealing with these set of smart contracts is like certainly not always the case. So it is a little misleading in that way. Yeah, I'd be very open to other ideas on this. It's just kind of hard to, I haven't come up with any personally.
So I think Trove has this like connotation, or it somehow matches the way our system redistributes debt and collateral among the positions. Like it somehow symbolizes the flow, or the fact that you can end up having like a larger trove after liquidations, so that, yeah, there is this kind of interdependency or interaction between the troves in the system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if, now sounds unfamiliar because nobody talks about it, nobody knew about it, but when you get traction and people talk about it, it's going to sound more familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I think. So if it's something that you feel it really represents the system in a word, it's even better. Like, I think that's where you find your word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not familiar now because nobody talks about it. When
Yeah.
they will, it will be,
Mm-hmm.
to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So, and I think we hope it's like a relatively catchy, short expression, so it should be recognizable or memorizable, hopefully. So cool, maybe we should proceed with the next topic so that we have enough time to have a discussion on the incentives. So this is just our general thought on incentives, that we, like, what we want is basically incentivizing the community, and not just incentivizing it in a flat way, but in a way that early adopters would get more than latecomers. I think that's fully in line with like most of the projects that are like using some kind of yield farming or liquidity mining type of thing, that you should better join early. I mean, it should not become like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid or anything, but I mean, there is value in incentivizing growth early on. We haven't settled like on a function or curve yet, but there are like different types of curves. Like one of them would be to have like this eternally, the curve that never basically, like it only approximates like 1 or the 100%, so that the protocol will keep on.
I think Robert got frozen for a second there.
Am I back? Sorry.
Yeah, you're back.
Great. So can you say where I stopped or where I dropped off? So
you're saying that the curve that never reaches.
Oh yeah. So it's just that like that's probably one of our most realistic or most probable choices for such a curve, so that even like after a few years you would still get something, even though this allocation or GT token will be like just a very small part. Yeah, but that's not even the main focus of this discussion. So I just wanted to like quickly summarize what our current system looks like. So we have like the current plan is, and that's what we also outline in our white paper, that we would have the GT tokens which would go to the front ends as well as to the stability depositors through a kickback mechanism. So basically the way it works is that stability depositors will be measured basically by the amount they deposit, like the stable coins, Liquity, or whatever it will be called, they deposit, and then based on that amount, the system will continuously allocate them a certain number of GT tokens, and it will not just allocate them to the stability depositors, but also to the front ends through which those stability deposits are made or are transacted. And the exact division between the two would be based on a kickback rate that's set by the front-end operator. So if the front-end operator sets, let's say, 80% kickback, then 20% would remain or go to the front end, and 80% would go to the stability depositors. And then among all the stability depositors, it would just be proportionally divided based on the size of the deposit. So that's the current incentive plan, and we thought that this would be a good idea. We recently reconsidered it and realized that maybe there are better ways to incentivize growth and the whole ecosystem. So the question is, how can we improve this? We would probably or most likely want to keep this incentive for the front ends, because somehow we need those front ends because we are not planning to run our own. But on the other side, this is still a bit an open question: who should receive the tokens? So yeah, and I think here I just want to summarize our design goals. I think the incentives should give us like an initial, or us, the protocol, an initial boost through this early incentive favoring curve, or early adopter favoring curve. But there should also be no unintended negative consequences. Like we don't want to cannibalize, let's say, other parts of our system by giving out like unreasonably high GT amounts. And last but not least, and this is very important, the system needs to work without the incentives in the long run. So even if we just remove all those GT token allocations, the system should still be stable and secure and work on its own. So this is, I think, not an easy, like it's quite an involved design decision which we need to take so that we can tick all the three requirements. And the purpose of the incentives are like threefold, I would say. I mean, we want to create growth like early on, but growth in our system means that we have like, we can create like the money supply, we can give out loans so that the money supply will grow, but it should also be liquid on secondary markets. So, I mean, we not only want to keep this all in our own system, but we want to make it so that people will trade and use our stablecoin on other platforms and integrate it with their own systems. And also stability is very important. We want to keep the system stable, both with regard to system solvency, like that all the positions need to be sufficiently collateralized, but also with regard to price stability. So we don't want to make it so that the incentives would somehow have a negative effect on the price, like push it down or pull it up or whatever. So yeah, maybe let me just quickly show you a few ways or a few alternatives to like this, or start with this stability depositor as our starting point and then show you some alternatives to this model. So here you can see this is Alice, our stability depositor, and she has two ways to acquire liquidity. This is, I'm calling it Liquity for now. This is our stablecoin. So either she opens her own Trove and takes out a loan, or she buys liquidity on an exchange like Uniswap. And then what she can do is she can deposit those tokens to the stability pool, and then the system would automatically issue or allocate like a certain GT amount to her or to her stability deposit. So that's our current idea. And then another idea is that we could also incentivize the borrowers instead of the stability depositors. So here Alice is a borrower. She borrows, creates liquidity using her Trove. And what she can do now is, what makes this system interesting is that she can do leverage. So she basically exchanges the liquidity for Ether, like for the collateral, that she can then use to top up her collateral. So here we see in the blue bar is the collateral and the red bar is the debt. So she can now basically put back some of the Ether or all of the Ether that she got in exchange for liquidity to top up her collateral, and then she can also increase her loan and take out more liquidity. And now we can basically give the GT token allocation either based on the collateral amount or based on the amount of debt. And what's interesting here is, and that might not be maybe as obvious at first sight, but this not only incentivizes people to create troves, but it also, or draw loans, but it also incentivizes them to sell some of them on the market. Because in order to make this kind of leverage, you need to sell it and get Ether, which you can use as collateral. So this way you can incentivize both growth as well as liquidity.
Robert, you're kind of cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
That's okay. I actually have a question for you here though. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what you're proposing here, are you proposing that you incentivize borrowing? So like in step one, when Alice is opening a Trove and borrowing liquidity, is she earning is she earning growth tokens there, or are you only suggesting that we incentivize people that are like increasing their leverage? Because it's really hard to track like when someone's actually increasing their leverage. It seems like what you're trying to say here is actually just like any Trove that has Liquity outstanding should be earning GT tokens, right?
Yeah, yes, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, if you look at how people would try to maximize their GT token revenue, they could do that by leveraging their positions. So even though people who don't do any kind of leverage would receive some GT tokens, they could increase their allocation by doing this leverage step. So that's like indirectly, I mean, if you think of people who want to maximize their revenue, you are basically incentivizing leverage and incentivizing liquidity that will be circulating on the market. So this is like the second or one of the alternatives. And then maybe I can tell you that this is, I think, currently in use by the system called Kava. They are incentivizing based on collateral, if I'm not mistaken. And then what we could, of course, do is just combine the two. So we have, on the one hand, this incentive scheme for borrowers, and on the other hand, we have the incentives for stability depositors. In this case, we need to find some split between the two. So this is a non-trivial question, because we also want to make sure that the two are like somewhat balanced. So we are not maybe over incentivizing one of the two actors. And then this fourth variant is also interesting. I think we can combine the two in maybe a better way than just having them side by side. So what if we say that only people who get their liquidity from their own Trove are incentivized for being a stability depositor? So as we have seen here, you had like those two ways of acquiring liquidity, either by buying them or by creating them yourself. Here, we only incentivize one of the two options. And this, of course, means that, so here, basically, we are not incentivizing people to just keep everything in our own system. So the problem with this one that I can see here is that people would buy up like liquidity from the exchanges. So because they can choose, so some people will do it this way, other people will do it the other way. But by incentivizing people to buy up liquidity from the exchanges and depositing it to our stability pool, we are basically making our liquidity supply just scarcer. And this might have the effect that the price would go up and would even exceed parity. So we basically have like a upward pressure on our price. And this, may break the peg. So that's why I'm a bit afraid that by applying this simple incentive scheme to stability depositors, we may end up having like this negative upward effect on the price. Like this is avoided here because—
Yeah, Robert, this is what Synthetics has done, the fourth version, exactly. When they lost the peg, it was like, as Synthetics USD was 0.92 or 93 at one point, and then they incentivized depositing SUSD on Curve. And then the peg got.
That's interesting though, because on Curve—
I was just going to say that.
On Curve, you would mean like, or go ahead. I don't.
Oh, I just wanted to remark, I was going to say that Synthetics leveraged an outside protocol in order to bring their peg back into parity through this mechanism, a similar one.
Yeah, because I think if you are incentivizing like a pool on Curve, you are incentivizing circulation of your token. So that should not have, in my view, like a negative or an upward pressure on its price, because you're basically just multiplying the liquidity on this Curve money market. But maybe so I'm not quite sure what happened to Synthetics there. So
The peg got stable,
Mhm.
but the problem is that they are giving tokens from their own pocket, so this won't last long. The plan is, or the hope is, that in the future the platform would be big enough and people would use it enough, so they slowly drop the incentives and the peg would remain the same. But they are up for experiment. I don't know because I don't know what will happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know the precise mechanism by how it retained the parity through depositing to the pool, but that was my understanding of it, that they were trading very low the peg, and then through incentivizing the liquidity, it was able to bring it back to $1.
Mhm. So yeah, it's
To look into that.
Mhm. So I was more thinking that by incentivizing people, like by incentivizing those money markets or pools, what you would basically do is you would increase like the depth of those markets, like there will be more tokens held by those pools, but this would not necessarily have like an effect on the price. I mean, it would reduce the slippage if somebody trades using those markets, because there is just more tokens in the pool, but I don't see like a direct effect how that would either push the price down or pull it up, or but maybe I'm wrong. So that's something we need to think more about. So yeah, here I just wanted to like maybe get back to this, that in this scenario, we are not pulling liquidity away from money markets or from exchanges, because here you can only use the liquidity that you generated on your own to get incentivized in the end. And this is then there may be something even more interesting, but this is like a sub variant of number 4. So this is similar to the slide that shown before. But here, what we are doing, or what we can do, is capping basically the base amount according to which the reward is calculated. So here we would basically look at your debt here, like this is what you generated. And let's say you generated like 100 liquidity, and you would maybe want to deposit all the 100 liquidity to the stability pool. Now you would not get like the reward based on the 100 liquidity, but maybe only based on 50% of it. Like there is no incentive to deposit more than 50 out of your 100 liquidity, because you wouldn't get more out of it. Like the gain would be the same. So in that sense, or in that scenario, there is another incentive that kicks in. So what you want to do is increase your debt, because this debt is also part of the way we calculate the maximum reward that you can get. So people here are also incentivized to do leverage in order to increase their debt, so that then they can use the increased debt and the tokens they generated to put them back to the stability pool. So here we can like relatively easily regulate the split, like how much people, like rational people. So here we are all assuming like rational people who are just like maximizing their profits. But here we can easily like say that we just want 50% of the people, or 50% of the generated liquidity to be put in the pool, and the rest should go to the markets. Does that make sense to you? Or if you have maybe questions on that, or if it wasn't clear, I'm happy to explain.
I lost you, to be honest.
Okay, so and if you go back here, we see that here you just get your GT allocation based on the deposited amount. It's just
Yes,
that.
I remembered in this case what exactly happened, and it's simple to understand, because they incentivized people to deposit synthetic USD, and then they had to mint it. And by minting it, they just created a lot more synthetics on the market, and it was all put into the pool. So,
like on Uniswap.
Yes,
Mhm.
but it was put on Curve, so just
Mhm.
by the sheer volume, then the peg got close to the truth.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something we should look into. I mean, I was rather under the impression that just by incentivizing money markets, you wouldn't have like a direct effect on the price, but I mean, that could very well happen.
Are we sure that this actually happened? Because on Curve, I can only see volume for SUSD starting 20th of April, when the peg was already much closer to 1 already again.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I'm looking into this issue. That was just what I understood it to be, but maybe there's more to the story.
But we should definitely investigate this a bit more in depth.
That was used as a sort of a last resort, though. It wasn't there to begin with. They just saw that it worked, and then they kept it going. And they first started with Uniswap, and then they moved to Curve. But slowly, they're starting to drop the incentives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this can only be seen as a kickstart mechanism. I mean, at some point it will just get depleted, and then the system needs to work without all those incentives. Yeah, so I think, I mean, here, oh yeah, somebody asked like for an explanation. So I just wanted to just very quickly recap here. Instead of just basing the amount, like, or the reward on the deposited amount, like here, in this example, we just take, or let's say, I mean, you cannot get a higher reward, or a higher reward based on a higher amount than a certain percentage of the debt. Like, even though like you are maybe depositing 80 out of the 100 that you created, you wouldn't get the reward based on that 80, but based on, let's say, 40, like based on some percentage.
How would you
of the debt.
tune that percentage? How would you tune it? How would you get to the right amount?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, I mean, we are planning to do economic simulations. So we'll be starting with that very soon, and this could be one of the questions to be analyzed.
I think like the way to think about it is, you know, the way we would kind of back into it is like, how much do we think we're going to need in the stability pool at any given time, or like what percentage of the total supply do we need to be in the stability pool ideally for the system to be, you know, kind of optimally safe, and whatever, and you know, kind of whatever number that ends up being, we'll kind of try to solve for that. So I kind of like this one because basically what you're saying is like, you're not just incentivizing borrowing, you're incentivizing stability deposits, but you're also not incentivizing people to put all of their stablecoin into the stability pool. You're also incentivizing people to kind of spend it or put it into Uniswap liquidity pool to just kind of like boost the velocity of money, essentially. So I kind of like this one because it has sort of like a dual incentive feature. And I guess I would say the reason this is important, and the reason that we're kind of having this call and things we've been thinking about, are that we don't want to create incentives that sort of like force people into a behavior which isn't doing a lot to continually help the system, right? Because if let's say we're only giving incentives to people to put into the stability pool, and then everyone's stablecoin is going into the stability pool so that they can earn those incentives, well, the system is only, you know, needing to be protected so much. Like, it's not actually helping the system at some point to continue putting you know, incentives toward that stability pool. So I think we're also open to other ideas. Like, if you guys have anything aside from just what we've suggested that you think would be interesting ways to incentivize users, please, by all means.
Yeah, I hope maybe I can jump in real quick on that. I work on the Shell protocol. I'm the co-founder they're of the shell protocol. And that's something that we would be interested in helping you guys with, in getting liquidity into the market with a bespoke pool for that purpose. And there's a few things that we can do uniquely that make that more powerful. For instance, we can have weights in our pools. So instead of having 33, 33, 33, or 25, 25, 25, 25, and effectively subsidizing liquidity for other coins, we can make a pool that would be 50% LQTY or LQTD, and have other coins that have smaller weights. So that's one thing I wanted to throw out there. Yeah, if people are interested in that, we can talk about it. But yeah, also would like to hear other ideas other people have as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Maybe let's start with the kind of like an easy question. What do people think about incentivizing just liquidity pool providers versus incentivizing, or excuse me, stability pool providers versus incentivizing borrowers? Does anyone have an opinion on that, or any like experience or examples they can point to what they think might be better?
Look, I've seen few models, talk to few people, what work, what not. I have an approach, maybe we can step back. The way I like to build incentives, and it's going to be an open discussion. I like to see them dynamic in a protocol, because the protocol is always dynamic, especially because they're agents that you really don't know how they're gonna behave. And you can do simulations, which is obviously great, but you don't really know how they behave on economic shifts. So having incentives that are dynamic, it's a good start. With dynamic incentive, I specifically intend something program-based, because we have, we spoke about the beginning, yield farming and all this fanciness. Well, that created an insane lack of stickiness of people participating in the protocols, right? So having incentives that target a specific stage of your protocol and target a specific agent in the economy of the protocol, it could be the key. And those incentives are dynamic because the protocol is dynamic and the agents are dynamic in a way, and you might need to incentivize a specific agent or class of agent at the beginning, while when you find a product market fit and when you find, your market, you might need to incentivize something else. So on that note, I think that for the very long term and for the long run, something that Aave did recently is to give the token a governance component, which I know you have a specific view on governance, right? Like, not like that you don't want any governance, but you don't want any human interactions in a way, right? The way you have been built at the beginning. But by governance, they mean skin in the game. So whoever has the right to gain growth token, or whatever you're going to call it, they also are the one who's going to risk something, which is the long-term stickiness that you want to create. So that I like it a lot. And it basically sustains the protocol, attracting the people that actually want to be in the protocol in the long term. Mm-hmm. And they're saving the ass of the protocol in, bad days. That's my approach on a high level.
That's very interesting. I think stickiness is really an important part. We should avoid like those just profit maximizers who are like just swapping between all the protocols just in order to maximize their profit, like on a short term. And I think the risk part that you mentioned is really interesting because, yeah, I mean, people who have some skin in the game are most probably the ones who are like a bit forward thinking and not just optimizing for the short term. Yeah.
So the point is to see, okay, who do I need the most now? And I need to incentivize them. It could be balanced, right? It doesn't have to be wholly in one class of agents and then they stop and then they go to another one. And of course you can't be like that because it would be crazy, but something dynamic, maybe in a way that you can, swap or decrease the percentage of who gets what at the beginning until you don't find an equilibrium.
To both of your points, Synthetics did, they had both of those qualities in their program. So like there's a year lockup whenever you learn or earn something on Synthetics. So that's some stickiness there. And then their incentive program is also on a rolling basis. So they have like campaigns and they'll try out an incentivization scheme and then see how it goes. And then maybe they'll rinse and repeat.
Yeah. It's like a program based because you're not gonna be, still in one model for all the life for your protocol. And also I think you need to be pretty, quick and nimble to adapt to markets because you want to attract somehow, liquidity from whoever is going to give it to you and give incentives to that, but not forever and not for the short term. So combinations and probably Synthetics, like James said, is the best in class so far on balancing the two.
I mean, this involves, as you already mentioned, some kind of governance. Otherwise, it's not possible to change later. So, I mean, this is a trade-off. I mean, if we want to adapt to like future situations that we cannot anticipate. But I would just say on that point that, I mean, the system needs to work without those incentives anyway. So, I mean, I see those incentives as a plus, but not as something that should or may harm the system. So it's, I mean, if it's not there, maybe the system will not grow as fast as it could, or if it's not optimal, like in the current situation. But what we really should avoid is creating a situation which is like detrimental to the core properties of our system.
So you see GT tokens more like a bonus sort of thing, not an essential 100% absolutely needed feature.
Yes, in that sense.
Like a bootstrap fuel or something like that.
Yes.
I understand. Speaking about Synthetics and about what James said, with the fact that you lock every time you get more Synthetics, they are locked 1 year. There's something that's needed to be added there. It's the fact that Synthetics token is at the heart of Synthetics protocol. They use that token to stake. And with that said, that token generates liquidity, generates dollars. And every time you get a bonus of tokens like a reward for staking, you get every week more Synthetics that gets vested for 1 year, but they also are staked. So basically what that means is it makes you stick to the protocol, retain, be there. For instance, if you stake for 1 year, then after 1 year, you can withdraw all your other money. You're basically free roll.
The rewards are also built up and only claimed after you unlock your your tokens.
Yes, you unlock, but 1 year for 1 year, starting 0.0 for 1 year, you have tokens that you cannot get out. So
Yep.
the best you can do is just stick to staking, and then you'll get more tokens. So it's like a snowball effect that gets you lifetime in the protocol. Because I already have tokens that I will have there for the next 1 year. Why not I just leave a part of it? Or but that works with synthetics. With GT tokens as not being a part in the heart, it can be, I don't know if there's a good reason to lock them for 1 year. That should be discussed. But that was a good point worth mentioning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just you know, for the sake of discussion and the community, I totally get the algorithmic approach that the protocol needs to be functioning by itself without, you know, this fuel that we can call incentive, or, you know, now becomes a drug in the DeFi space right now. And I totally get it, because it
very addictive drug.
Yes, exactly. And then you said it's detrimental, right?
Yeah.
But in a way, if you go back to sanity, I think incentives are very important for protocol. So even when I read on the slide, maybe number 2, the one you shared with Roderick a few days ago, and you said like at the end, like the system should work without incentives. It sounded a little bit, you know, contrarian to whatever it should be a design, even on the long term. So I get that you don't want to have anything detrimental. I get it. And, you know, you want long term, you want stickiness. But at the same time, I think incentive should always be, that's my personal view, part of the network effect. It should be always an incentive to do the right thing for the protocol. In a way.
Yes. So I totally agree with that point. So I think we are not opposing like on the question. So I mean, the question is whether the incentives that we are like discussing now, they are like added to the core protocol. So the core protocol itself has already a set of incentives, like you as a stability depositor, you will be earning those liquidation gains, so the collateral surplus gains, which should by itself be an incentive, like a sufficient incentive to become a stability depositor. And yeah, so I think these GT token incentives are like just added on top to make the protocol more like grow faster and just make it more popular. But it's, yeah, I mean, even without those GT tokens, the system would still rely on a number of incentives.
There is something of a dynamic nature to the kind of core incentives, in that, like, if the stability pool is empty and you become the only depositor, then you get, assuming your deposit covers liquidation, you get the whole reward from that liquidation. So it's kind of like self-correcting. As the stability pool empties, there's more incentive to jump in, and then as it's filled up, you're going to get less of a share when you jump in. So there is a kind of dynamic aspect to it.
And maybe it's also like this dynamic aspect is based on the fact that like normally you would share some revenue or some reward with other people, and the more people there are, or the more stake is deposited, then the smaller will be your share. So it's like self-correcting by the fact that this, like the beneficiary, the set of like eligible participants can grow or shrink, And so this should lead to an equilibrium based on the yield that you can achieve. So maybe, I mean, if there are no more inputs on that, I just wanted to close this. So this was like a slide which I didn't cover, but this basically is, we already mentioned this, that we can simply incentivize liquidity providers on other protocols like Uniswap or Curve or Shell, for example. I'm sorry that it's not listed here. So, but then—
Oh, it's okay. We're releasing our white paper very soon, so
yeah,
no problem.
So we can edit. Yeah, so this is just like to summarize. I mean, we have like a number of options with their pros and cons. Yeah, I think it's really a question of like what we want to achieve with those incentives and whether those incentives may have like adverse effects on other areas. Or yeah, let me know if you think, or is there something else that we should be aware of? So, I mean, there is this kind of price effect, which can be unwanted, or maybe there are other effects that are, yeah.
Like maybe like a separate incentive could be geared towards insurance, especially towards like smart contract risk or anything thereof.
Another thing that we're considering is our governance token campaign. We're considering including other protocols in it. So this is something that might act as incentivization for liquidity providers to stake to the shell pool to not only earn something on your side, but also earn something from our side. That's something maybe it makes sense to talk together about. Yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry if I did it a little too quickly. I have to go right now, but that's why I wanted to just kick it out there.
Yeah, so let's keep in touch and see where we can get from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for your input.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
No problem.
we have to kind of like wrap up here soon anyway, unless anyone has any last comments. I mean, we can always continue this like next week or something, but I think we're getting close to time here.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for having the call. It was great to see what you guys are working on. And it'd be really nice if you could send this presentation here so I could look at it later.
Sure, yeah, it's already public, but I can send you the link. But you will also find it an announcement in the announcement channel in our
Okay, cool.
board.
I'll grab it from there.
Sure.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, James, and thank you all for your inputs. And it was a really interesting discussion, and I think we should keep this up. Like,
yeah, I think this has been really helpful, and just kind of like it's nice to, I don't know, have a community to kind of bounce these ideas off of and such. So we do actually have a channel in our Discord that's titled Economic Mechanisms. So if any of you have any other ideas after this that you think of later on, or other commentary that maybe didn't make it into the call, feel free to post your ideas there, and we'd love to hear about them and talk more there. And we'll let you know when we're going to have another one of these sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
See ya.